I don't think you heard the song they just sang. Did you hear it? I'm not hearing much joy coming from you. Joy to the world, the Lord is come. Let earth receive her King. Oh, all right. So this presidential race that we're in. Well, I'm making the connection for you. We don't have to worry about that. That silliness, that silliness doesn't have to hurt us or concern us very much right now. Joy to the world, the Lord is come. Let earth receive her King. Joy to the world, the Savior reigns. There are many pretenders to the throne. And you can tell a pretender to the throne, they just go a little bit too far. They're insecure about it, so they have to run their mouth a little too long. And then you find out how much of a fool they really are. If you're wondering what I'm going with this, I want you to get your joy back. I want you to understand something about today in the season of Advent. We heard those lyrics. We sing that song all the time. It is a familiar song to us. Joy to the world. It is jolly, it's lively, and we immediately belt it out. We don't even have to be prompted. We know it by heart. We probably learned it when we were toddlers. And we sing it without thinking about what it says very clearly, the power of the words. If we listen carefully to what we are singing, we are actually joining the prophets of old. We are becoming prophets when we say, joy to the world, the Lord is come. When you sing that song, you are declaring something in the midst of this world. We're saying that Emmanuel, God with us, is fulfilling a divine promise to come and be in our midst. And here it is. You pretenders to the throne. It's not about you. So when we say joy to the world, we're talking about something that goes beyond those pretenders. Even if we don't see it in the conditions of the present world, even if we don't feel it in the state of human nature, we know that God has every intention of doing things right. So for all those who sing joy to the world as a simple carol for the Christmas season, my hope is that now you cannot unknow what you know. And so when you sing this again, you will say, oh wow, the pastor was right. I have become a prophet. And I am declaring to the world that this song, Joy to the World, is my expression of faith and anticipation of a wondrous time of light and victory over darkness and gloom. Will you pray with me? Merciful and loving God, great God of the universe, thank you for this Advent day of joy. Thank you for this worship celebration. Make it a celebration, O God. Reveal yourself anew to your people that they may sing a song of joy at your presence in our midst. Oh, bless this preaching moment. Hallow it, make it sacred. Take these words, make them your own. Less of me, more of you. Use us for your good purposes. In your many names we pray. Amen. The prophet Zephaniah. I'm. If you are wondering why I'm using the prophets during this Advent season, And it occurred to me this morning that someone may wonder why I'm preaching from the prophets and not so much from the New Testament at this time. If you remember in the beginning, we were talking about Advent being a moment of anticipation, and my hope was that we would not simply anticipate Christmas Day, but that we would take this opportunity to anticipate God doing something big and wonderful throughout the year and the years and throughout our lives. That we're not just waiting for Christmas morning, but we are watchful for God's movement all the time in our midst. And so Zephaniah is a prophet that you probably don't hear much about. But the scholars often refer to him as the gloomy prophet. You didn't want to hang out with Zephaniah. He would bring you down. His name means the God who protects or hides. And that's about all we know about him. There are some superscriptions in the beginning of the book of Zephaniah that tell us who he's related to, but we can't verify any of it. But what's important for us to know about Zephaniah, the gloomy prophet, is that he remembers a time before exile of the people of Israel, when the kings of Israel embraced the covenant with God wholeheartedly. And they loved God with all their heart, mind, soul, and strength. And they served the widow and the orphan and the stranger. They were good kings, trying to live up to the calling that God placed on them. But Zephaniah spends a great deal of time lamenting how far the leaders have fallen. And he spends a great deal of time complaining about how the people have forgotten how to worship. And he worries that they have missed what God had for them. They had forgotten God's loving kindness, and then they failed to show loving kindness to the weakest among them. Yes, it was true. The leaders were corrupt and they were unjust. The worship was selfish and shallow. And even in the church, the church folk, the faithful folk, they began to exploit and oppress the poor people. And then he noticed by looking at their worship and looking at them that they had become apathetic. That the people had actually become convinced that there was no judgment against them for all the things that they were doing. They had gotten to the point where, oh, God's not going to do anything to us. We could do whatever we want. And they began to refuse to share their abundance. They became prosperous when they came back to the land and didn't care much for the poor people. And in light of this turning away from God, from this authentic worship that Zephaniah remembered, he began his prophetic career delivering oracles of destruction, warning the people that you will be judged for your idolatry. You'll be judged for your complacency. You will be judged for your failure to keep covenant. And he lamented that the world was nothing but gloom, wrath, ruin, distress, darkness, and devastation. See, that's why they call him gloomy. He had no good news for them. But then, all of a sudden, they noticed something. After all that warning of destruction, the gloomy prophet shifts. And as if on a dime, he begins to sing a new song. He shifts what he's saying. It's as if he had split personalities. One moment he was saying you were going to get destroyed, and the next moment he starts singing a song of joy. And they begin to wonder, what's wrong with Zephaniah? What is happening to him? But what they couldn't understand was that the prophecy shifted in Zephaniah when he begins to contemplate what life would be like when God comes to be with them. You heard the music ministry sing, O come, Emmanuel. Zephaniah begins to sing that song to himself. God is coming. God is coming. And he begins to imagine what it would be like when when God is there and when Israel moves away from their allegiance to their human kings and go back to the faith in their true sovereign, the one God. He paints a real contrast of life without God, which is what had been going on, and life with God. Oh, what's it going to be like when God comes into our midst? And so he sings a song of joy. In the midst of gloom and darkness, Zephaniah becomes a herald of bright and joyous news to a people who have lost hope. Zephaniah, the gloomy prophet, sings a song of joy. Even he has a song of joy in his heart. Even as the people experience this world in disarray, Zephaniah declares that the promise will be fulfilled. And then this is what he says. And oh my God, it must have been dissonance. People were looking at him and praying, "Sing, daughters of Zion. Sing. Sing, daughter Jerusalem." Okay, you don't understand that song. So here's what I think he might have said. This is what it must have sounded like. "Joy to the world! The Lord is come. Let earth receive her King. Joy to the world!" Oh, you didn't hear Zephaniah. But that's what Zephaniah started to sing. In the midst of all that gloom, he started to sing joy to the world. And the people begin to wonder, why are you singing this song of joy? Oh, I have a new oracle of deliverance, he says. It is a song of restoration and liberation. It is a call to Israel to get ready, to start living like the people of the covenant again, to go out and do what? Repeat the sounding joy. See, if you didn't know what that means, let me tell you what it means. Repeat the sounding joy. The joy that is in your heart, keep repeating it. Let the world know. Sing joy to the world over and over and over again. One with joy. I'll talk to the candles. His song is an invitation to become agents and heralds of a faithful promise of God, that the day is surely coming when God will come and be in their midst. And what a day of rejoicing that will be. Oh, Zephaniah couldn't wait. He started rejoicing right then and there. Joy to the world. The Lord is come. Oh, yes. He looked crazy, because all around them the world was dark. What are you singing about, Zephaniah? Because God is coming. And what a day of rejoicing that will be. Oh, I know it. When we look around at the world's condition, when we look around at the human condition, singing a song of joy is not the first thing that comes to your mind. Oh, I know. You pick up that newspaper and you see the latest thing that someone just said. Oh, you're not singing songs of joy. When death is plastered across our television screens, not just over in the Middle East, but here, right over in California, or right over there in Colorado. Oh, you don't want to sing a song of joy. That's not what we want to do. And some of us may feel that the gloomy prophet is actually the true prophet. The one who says that, oh, it's so horrible, it's so gloomy, it's so dark, there's nothing but ruin and destruction in our view. Oh, I know, songs of joy just don't ring loudly that much. Oh, the death and destruction in the Middle East, especially of innocent children caught in the middle of nations and terrorists, battling each other with weapons of mass destruction. Oh, who's singing songs of joy? We can barely tap down our anger at our politicians and business leaders who ignore poverty and inequality and exploitation of the weakest. Why are we singing, Pastor? I know you're asking it. We look on helplessly as we see just human life snuffed out in minutes with guns that shoot so fast you can't even get your mind to get a time and mind ready to escape it. It happens so quickly and so fast. We can't do it, and it's so indiscriminate. We don't know when it's going to happen. We don't know who's going to get caught up in it. Oh, we find it hard to trust, to believe, to have hope when it appears that sexism is alive and well. Racism is alive and well. Homophobia just keeps showing up. Transphobia is resulting in deaths all around us. It just keeps happening. Why do you want to sing? That's a fair question. That's a fair question. What kind of song of joy is there? Oh, but I know something. I know something. We, as followers of the way, we experience joy in our songs, our prayers, our sermons, and worship. And we experience it because we know something, that God is right there with us. That every time we've gone through that valley and shadow of darkness, sometimes we find ourselves on the other side of the mountain where light is shining on our faces, and we remember. That's what Zephaniah did. Zephaniah remembered that there was a wilderness wandering 40 years. And then, as if by magic, they found themselves in a promised land flowing with milk and honey. God was faithful and turned that sorrow into joy. Oh, we remember it. We experience it when we come into this place and we give each other a sign of peace, or we get an embrace. And when someone tells us, hey, I've been praying for you, or it's going to be okay, or here, good news. And then we get a foretaste of the removal of separation, the conquering of fear, the liberation from oppression, the restoration of community, all of those things that come with knowing that God's got our backs. And then we have joy in God's presence, joy about God's promises, joy about life abundant, joy about being a part of a beloved community. Oh, but someone says, Pastor, I don't know how you can sing a song of joy. What makes you so sure that the promise will come? Oh, I know some days we feel that way. But I can sing a song of joy because my whole experience with God has been about renewal and restoration. And here's the beautiful part. When I look out at everyone here, I know you've experienced renewal and restoration. Some of you tell me. Some of you talk about it. You give testimony to it. Oh, everyone who escaped those places where people didn't love you. Those who confronted their addiction and found freedom in recovery. Oh, that's the renewal. That's the joy that can come flooding through when we allow God to be God. I'm sure of the promise because God has endowed each of us with the will, the spirit, and the courage to go out and love one another, just love one another just a little bit more, just enough to make change, just enough to experience a little justice. Oh, I've seen it around this place. The joy that comes when people come to this building and they feed the hungry, when they serve the weakest among us, where they go out and fight for justice for those who have been harmed and mistreated by the powers. In the gathering of a community of love, I've seen it. People of diverse backgrounds finding that, oh, this is my sister. This is my brother. This is my sibling. It is in the demonstration of the kindness and the generosity to our neighbor. It is the radical welcome to the stranger. Oh, that's what it's about. Singing joy to the world. Awakening ourselves to the joy of life with God. And that song is infectious. Oh, once they got over the fact that the gloomy prophet was singing, they started to join in on the song. I hear you, Zephaniah, and I remember what God has done. Oh, let me be clear. Let me be clear to you. Awakening to joy is not a denial of sadness or hardship or ugliness. Joy is not a pretense that everything is okay and nothing is wrong. Joy does not mean we will never have another negative thought. It doesn't mean any of that. But it means what Zephaniah shows us in his prophecy. That even when I look around and I see that the world is in disarray, I remember who God is. I remember what God has done before. I remember how God delivered. I remember when I couldn't see a way, and then God somehow made a way. I see it. I see it. The song is there. Oh, even in my nightmare, the dream is brighter. Oh, even through the tears, and there will be tears. Oh, there's a joy on the inside. Oh, little old lady in Mississippi used to sing, "This joy I have, the world didn't give it to me." And then she goes on to say, "They didn't give it to me, and they can't take it away." Oh, that joy. That joy. So when you leave this place today, go ahead and sing joy to the world. Sing it loud. Even if you're mad at the bill collector. Sing it loud. Even if your neighbor is playing his music just way too loud. You sing joy to the world all that much louder. Even when the next thing that presidential candidate says, you just keep singing joy to the world. Let God be God. Awaken to the joy that I know is deep down in your soul. Joy to the world. The Lord is come. Amen.